Winers. Welcome back. My name is Amanda Lopez. I'm president here at Transform Consulting Group. We're so excited that you're on our Wine About Data podcast. Today, I'm fortunate to be joined by my colleague, Morgan Ellis. Morgan, please introduce yourself to the Winers in case they don't know who you are yet.
Yes. Hello, everybody. My name is Morgan Ellis, like Amanda said, and I am TCG's communications manager.
Great. Well, as you can imagine, we're probably talking something marketing or comms related since I have the wonderful Morgan here to join us. And we are. I'm very excited because we're going to be tackling annual reports.
Yes.
We are getting ready, entering the last quarter of the year. So if you haven't already started to think about your annual report, I'm sure this hopefully will draw it to like higher on the list of what to do. But before we dig into that, what are we drinking today, Morgan?
Oh, yes. Okay. So we have a non-alcoholic peach Bellini, and the brand is called Nozeco.
Nozeco. That sounds like you pick really interesting brands. And like we tell all of our winers, whatever you want to pour into your cup as you're listening to us, we welcome. Well, Morgan, let's give this a try.
All right.
Cheers. Of course. Ooh.
Okay.
It's very peachy.
I love peach. This tastes like peach Jelly Bellies.
Or the like peach
rings?
The peach rings. My
Peach
kids love those.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
But it has like a bit of a fizzy, so you get that sparklingness.
Oh yeah.
We were worried it'd be too sweet, but it's not too bad.
No,
it's not too sweet.
I could definitely sip on this. As you know, I'm a sipper. I take care of my beverages.
Yeah, that's delicious. There's so many great non-alcoholic drinks out there.
We got it at our local wine and cheese bar.
Yes, which we will include in the show notes if you're ever visiting here in Wabash. All right, Morgan. Well, let's get into it and talk about annual reports. I love annual reports. I don't know when I fell in love with them, but I am always seeking them out, and I love to look at organizations' annual reports.
Yeah.
Because they are so different and unique, and especially for a nonprofit organization.
Wait, before we get into it, can I ask what your favorite component of annual reports are?
Ooh, well, I love photos because I feel like if done well, you can immediately get a sense of heart for the organization and maybe what was interesting that year. And then stories. I want to see like those anecdotal, who are they going to feature? And then of course, I need to see my numbers. I want to see some good aggregate data, and I'm already getting into our tips and solutions. But
oh my gosh. Okay.
Okay, so let's get into first, we've been talking about data storytelling.
Yeah.
And we will introduce and we'll link in our show notes our data storytelling framework that we have and follow. And really, an annual report is an excellent tool for telling your nonprofit story.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a great way that you can say, you know, here's what we accomplished this year and kind of tee up what do you think's on the horizon maybe for the next year.
Yeah.
And can be such a great marketing tool. I think, what are some of those pitfalls and challenges that you see nonprofits have with their annual report?
I think, and I don't know, you might have this experience, but in my years of working with annual reports, that term feels so lofty.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Because it's such a big
undertaking.
If you've got goals that maybe even you didn't meet, and you still have to report on because it's your annual report.
Right.
Like, how do you make that message clear?
It can be a lot of information to cover.
Yeah.
Many nonprofits have multiple service lines. They're offering diverse programs, you know, multiple communities. And, you know, I think most annual reports are relatively brief, like less than 10 pages-ish. You know, it's not going to be, you know, a 40-page report.
Or like a dissertation.
Right, on your nonprofit. It's supposed to be a synthesis. You know, of that. And so I think it can be challenging.
Yeah, if you're doing, like you just said, if you're doing a lot of things, have a lot of services, programs, how do you narrow it down to make it the most impactful?
Right.
Knowing what would resonate with your audience.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. I think for me, some of the, you know, pitfalls, or sometimes I'm underwhelmed if I only see like financial data. So a lot of nonprofits in their annual report use that as an opportunity to list all of their donors. And so I've seen that take up 3, 4, 5 pages. So that to me is a lot of real estate that's not really communicating a whole lot, you know, depending on your audience of who you're trying to communicate with. And I do think it is important to show, you know, your funding. You're a nonprofit, you're here in the community to do good, you're receiving a tax benefit, not paying taxes, right? So, looking at your financials of how much did you raise, but I feel like that could be a small section. It doesn't have
Yeah.
to be the big part.
Yeah. And yes, now that you say that, I am thinking about the being underwhelmed factor. Like
Yeah.
maybe being so overwhelmed, but underwhelmed by the amount of text that's on there and not really being
Yes.
able to see the impact, even though it's
Mm-hmm.
all, writing and they may be telling a story, it might not connect.
Right.
Yeah.
But I've been excited because I feel like in the last 5-ish years with new technology, there's
Mm,
some really creative ways that and tools that nonprofits can leverage to just spice up, or enhance their annual report. So I think we're
yeah.
going to talk about that.
Yeah.
As we've kind of set the tone a little bit here around some of the challenges and pitfalls with the annual report, what are some of our go-to tips
Mm,
for how to best structure a
yeah.
nonprofit's annual report?
Yeah. Well, I think overall, the theme that Amanda and I are talking about is this is a story, this is a storytelling tool. The number one tip from the get go is to make sure that your audience for this report is clearly defined.
Yep.
Is it strictly going out to donors? Is it going out to all of your stakeholders? Is it just an internal document?
Mm-hmm.
Nailing that down, because that's really going to shape how you end up writing it and even what data you
Yes.
end up pulling.
Yeah. We always, with any deliverable that we create for our clients, it's always who's the audience.
Yeah.
Because while the information might be the same, the messages will be different, the layout, the visuals,
Mm-hmm.
all of that really. And I think maybe that in and of itself can be a mix. And you can still have a very broad audience, but you just want to name that
Yeah.
and be clear about that.
Yeah.
So that's a great first tip. So, Morgan, what's another tip? So, after we've defined the audience, what
Mm-hmm.
are a couple of other things we should keep in mind?
Yeah. So again, back to storytelling, you want to make sure that you have one like centralized area of
Mm-hmm.
focus for your report.
Right.
It is my dream to produce an annual report someday where I have like a poster child on the cover. I'd love to do some kind of magazine style annual
Mm,
report, not, 100 pages or whatever, but
right.
to have somebody or a family or an organization or a client or somebody on the cover that
Mm-hmm.
they embody.
Encapsulate the
Yes, the
mission. Yeah.
mission, and to kind of weave that one person or group throughout, and then have your data paired side by side with that
Mm-hmm.
story to provide the proof
Right.
of of the impact of your
Yeah.
work and how it's impacting that poster child. You got to have a story, and then you have to have all of the facts and data to prove it.
That's our like number one formula, right? Is we're in the human business. We're in the people business. Any
Mm-hmm.
nonprofit, unless you're animals, right? But that's your furry humans, right? But at the end of the day, it's the stories. You got to
Yeah.
pull on those heartstrings
Mm.
and really show like how your services come to life and put a face to a name. And then also include some really great solid data.
Yeah.
And I think the data to lean into that a little bit more is to me two-pronged. What's your reach, right? So like how many meals did you serve? How many people did you house? Like some of those counts, but then also the outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now as a result of this, what change has happened?
Yeah.
And so often we lead with the outputs, the numbers served, because those are easier to count and quantify, but we also want to include some of those big outcomes. And we'll
Yes.
share some examples of that here in a little bit. I think another big tip is also to still align to your mission
Yes.
with your
Yeah.
organization. It's another core piece
Mm-hmm.
for, telling your nonprofit story. And so while that theme for the year might be, nuanced, how does it roll up and align to the
Yeah.
organization's overall mission?
Yeah. And I think whatever data you end up pulling is
Mm-hmm.
going to have to tell that mission driven
Right.
story, especially if your organization is focused on accomplishing that
Yeah.
mission, working toward your vision. So, if done well, I think all three of those components, working in the mission, having a focal point, and working in all of your data, can really paint this beautiful picture
Yes.
at the end of the year for
Mm-hmm.
your organization, for sure.
Yep, absolutely. And then, of course, you spent all this time creating this beautiful report. So
Yeah.
we need to have a strong plan to disseminate.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, you want to make sure that your report's getting out and being seen, right? Especially if you have some really integral key players, key audience members that are going to need to see this, especially if they're donors, funders, whatever. So making sure you've got that marketing plan ready to go. You know who
Right.
you're going to send it to, when you're going to send it, probably even working in like a project management plan so that you're on track internally to be able to get it out the door. I've worked on reports before where we weren't actually publishing it until March of a given year, but we started working on it almost a year prior, working on the report. So there can be a lot of work that goes into it.
Yep. You know your organization best and who
Yeah.
all needs to kind of speak into that, review it, sign
Yeah.
off on it. But to do it well, there are several steps in the process.
Oh, for sure.
So, build in both the prep work time and that dissemination follow up after.
And I think over planning, time invested and involved in putting together an annual
Yep.
report is better than thinking it can be whipped out,
Right.
because that's never the case. Yeah.
Which we know here
Yeah.
at TCG.
Yeah.
And then, we talked about this a little bit, but there are some new tools out
Yeah.
there. So think about like the different types of platforms that you want to have it live on, right?
Annual report could be the key piece of collateral that you have for your organization at the end of the year. And it's this beautiful print piece, stapled, bound, whatever. But having it available online is also really important.
Yes.
And there are so many, like you said, great tools like Issue. It's ISSUU.
We'll link it in the show notes.
Yes, that you can host like an actual flip book of your annual report. We've used that before. I know if you are designing things like that, reports like that in Canva or Adobe Express, you can have a public viewable link. So if that's your design tool, you can use that as the hosting platform, and it's available online too, not just in print. But yeah, there are lots of different ways you can even break it down.
Think of like different mediums of how you want to have it hosted and different ways that your audience, again, going back to the audience, will use it.
Yeah.
Well, let's share a couple of examples of how we've seen this put into practice. We can start with ourselves here at TCG. So we finally decided we need to walk the talk and jumped on the annual report bandwagon, which I'm so happy and excited about. But it does take a lot of work. So we've done, I think, 3 years now of our annual reports, and we literally just started the process to think about next year's 2025 annual report. Because like Morgan said, there is a lot of prep work. For us, what we usually do is we start with what you were talking about, Morgan, is like, what would be a focal point for the year? And so typically I've thought and reflected on like, what are some emerging themes that I've seen and what kind of percolates to the top? And usually there's like an overall theme. And then from that, I'm able to pull out stories. Like for us, it's our clients, that we're going to feature. But for us going into creating this annual report, one of our primary audiences is to reach new clients. So we really use that as a marketing tool to build awareness of our company and our services and solutions.
Yeah, you just said it. One of the purposes of annual reports could be a marketing tool, and then another purpose could be to show your funders and your donors and all of those different stakeholders relevant, vital information that is actually going to appeal to them. So like how we're working on our annual report might not be the case that would work for you.
Right.
But yeah, I'm excited to work on our report this
I
year
know.
because I've only worked on like nonprofit type reports in the past. And so this is going to be a little bit different.
See what like parallels follow it. But I think about a few of our clients. So we have had clients who we've done annual reports for them, again, with that data storytelling piece. One of our clients, a couple of them, they have as part of like their funding, and it's a government funding stream, a requirement to complete an annual report.
Yeah.
And so for them, they're having to do it to really check the box for that funder. But it hasn't been a very strong marketing or communication piece. And so that's what they wanted us to do. They wanted to help kind of translate this kind of dull, very depth report, yes, into something that could be more socialized. So we worked with a nonprofit in Indiana here called Infancy Onward, and they're a really neat organization. They help individuals become certified to provide infant mental health across the state, and it's so needed. And so we were able to take their kind of more in-depth government type report that still met the requirements, but then translate that for a really broad audience so that they could use it as a marketing tool to get the word out and awareness about who they are, what's their purpose, what impact did they have this year.
I think one really important thing as you're talking, I'm just thinking a lot about how I'm approaching marketing in general. Like annual report can be, like we said, a little daunting, and some of the language, I'm sure, especially jargony, approaching it from your industry, your sector, I think annual reports are probably best served when they are easy and simple to read,
Yep.
especially if you are working storytelling into numbers and pairing those together, like adding in language that any person is not going to like
Understand. Yeah.
understand, like their heartstrings aren't going to get pulled
Right.
in any way because they're not sure what that means. But yeah, having it read really nicely,
Yeah.
really easily is important too.
Yes. Yes. And another quick example is we worked with a nonprofit. We're working with them for several years, and they provide a lot of different programming for youth to help more young people, specifically African American youth, go to college and persist and complete. They have a big flagship gala event every year in the spring. And they hand out their annual report, and it's like a 15-page glossy.
Ooh.
And their gala event is almost up to like 1,000 people. So that's a huge audience
That's a lot of eyes.
that they're reaching, very much like a donor-centric audience. So it's a great opportunity to let the donors know, here's our impact. And for several years, their annual report really just talked about their outputs. Like we've served so many youth, how many programs they participated in, all of those counts. But it didn't really tie back to their mission, which was to close that educational equity gap and getting more students to and through college, right? And so we'd been working with them on their data. So I was so excited that first year that we attended where they had it in their annual report and it looked so good. And so now they can really show, wow, we are really doing an incredible job sending a huge number of students to college who participate and graduate from our programming, and we're doing better than the state average.
Did they have a focal individual that they followed
Yes,
on their
so
college journey?
yes, so it's so exciting. So in the annual report, they did do storytelling.
Yeah.
So they featured several of their students and their alumni, as well as some good visual charts. And then this gala event, they actually have the students there too.
Yes.
So you get to see it, but then you get to walk away with this piece that also shows that.
That's amazing. That's
Yes,
amazing. I
so
love that.
it's so exciting to see just, some of these little changes. But again, for them, like they thought it was good. And so I think it's also easy to just like, this is what our annual report has always looked like. So I definitely would encourage our listeners, like share your annual report with maybe somebody new with fresh eyes and ask them, like, after reading this, what's their takeaway?
Yeah.
What do they get about your organization? And are they getting the message that you want?
And I would ask people who have maybe no idea who you are, what you do.
Right, exactly. Yeah, not in your sector.
Yeah.
Not connected to you, so that you could get kind of that fresh perspective. And that might be an eye-opening opportunity to say, let's like reset here. So Morgan, we covered a lot today.
Yeah.
I feel like we got really excited about annual reports. Maybe we need to have a 2-part series. So listeners, let us know if you want to learn more. And we'll definitely link several different examples of annual reports that we love, as well as our own here at TCG. But what would be one tip that we want to leave our listeners, right? Like, how can they get started, especially as we're entering this last quarter, gearing up for end of the year?
Yeah. Oh, man. Okay. Always have a running list of stories going.
Yes.
And experiences that you have in the field. Of course, if we've entered the last quarter of 2025, that it's a little too late to start that list, but not too late for next year's report.
Right. You're on to a good point there, Morgan. Like reach out to your, leadership team, depending on the size of your organization, and start to try to identify those like testimonial, because who can you feature in that annual report? And so a lot of times, your staff are having these interactions with their clients, and they may not think of that individual or that experience as something to highlight and feature.
Yeah.
And so how do you make that top of mind, like you said? So you're collecting it throughout the year. But if you haven't yet, then like reach out to the team and start to try to gather some of those stories.
All in all, you keep a running list of stories.
Yes, we always want to, like, as we talk about with our data storytelling formula, you always want to have some of those good stories. And so I think that the more staff see stories being featured, it'll become top of mind when they're in meetings with teams and hearing about experiences with clients.
Yeah.
Well, Morgan, thanks so much for joining me today. I was glad to talk about your report.
Oh, me too.
And I know we got to jump on it here at TCG. Well, Winers, we hope that you got some nuggets around how to create a beautiful annual report to promote and tell the great story of your nonprofit this year. Feel free to look in the show notes where we'll link some of these resources. We have a couple of blogs and tips about annual reports that you can find out more information there. And if you haven't yet, make sure that you're following transformconsultinggroup.com on all the social media channels. And you can also sign up for our newsletter where we send some helpful tips and other resources there. And if you enjoy our podcast, we would love if you would subscribe and click that 5-star review.
Yeah.
Well, Morgan, cheers to you and all the
Cheers,
great storytelling
Amanda.
you're doing.
Yes, you too.
Cheers to our winers.
Talk to you later.